this video, we will overview some of the direct search methods that are used for parameter estimation or for any optimization problem in general. We will look at stochastic search algorithms, what are stochastic search algorithms, and two classic algorithms, namely simulated annealing and genetic algorithms. So, the classic stochastic search algorithms some of you may have heard of are simulated annealing. There are particle swarm algorithms, of course a battery of evolutionary algorithms including genetic algorithms, evolutionary strategies, differential evolution and so on. So, let us look at simulated annealing, which is one of the most one of the first methods in fact, and a very popular method for nonlinear optimization, complex optimization. But I must warn you that simulated annealing is has not been found to be too useful in case of biological systems, because it is expensive, and more than being expensive, the convergence rates have been quite poor, at least in a study that we did a few years ago. So, simulated annealing essentially is inspired from condensed matter physics. So, you all may have heard of annealing, it is a common metallurgical process. So, what does annealing involve? You essentially heat up a metal to a very high temperature and slowly cool it to room temperature. So, what it does is it tries to remove the imperfections in the metal and give you a nice metal at the end of the process. So, how does that relate to computation? So, you need to look at analogies. So, what is heating, what is temperature, what is cooling and so on. So, the key idea in simulated annealing was the fact, so what happens to the molecules in the metal? They have a lot of kinetic energy, right. So, they are really jumping around at the initial high temperature, but as you start cooling the system, the molecules kind of settle down, right. So, the same idea is used here. What you do is you start searching for an optimum by heating up the system, meaning you are very exploratory in the beginning, you really jump around the parameter space, and then you slowly cool the system and you stop jumping around and you really commit in some sense to exploring a particular direction and arrive at one minimum. Again, it could be a local minimum, but the idea is because you have done a much better search, you are likely to get at least a better local minimum rather than even if not the global minimum. So, how does it work? The key idea is you perturb the configuration of a system and you accept all moves that reduce the cost. This is what is your classic hill climbing, no difference from hill climbing. Accept all moves that reduce the cost, but the key innovation was, this was known as the metropolis criterion. You accept a small fraction of the costs of the moves that increase cost with low probability, meaning you accept everything that reduces cost, which will bring you here, but then with a small fraction, with a small probability, you might be able to get out of this point and then you will again continue your descent and maybe reach a better minimum. But again with a small probability you might be able to go out of this. But what you usually do is you have something called a cooling schedule, it may look like this or look like this or look like this. What is the rate at which you cool down the system? So, what you, and let us say you move from EI to EJ, right. So, you move from essentially theta I to theta j, the cost of which is EI in the first case, EJ in the second case. If EJ is less than EI, accept this move for sure, no question, right. That is like your classic hill climber. If EJ is greater than EI, you accept it with some small probability. This probability is generally proportional to e to the so this is again very inspired from Boltzmann distribution, condensed matter physics. So delta, yeah, minus delta E. So delta E is basically Ej minus Ei. So e to the minus delta E by t. So what happens when T is very low, you will reject a lot of moves that go in the wrong direction. When T is very high, you will accept a lot of moves that go in the wrong direction. So you are very exploratory in the beginning, so you kind of jump all around the place, but then after a while you probably settle down and hopefully reach this point.
So what's capital T here? Capital T is what?
Temperature. Yeah, some notion of temperature. It could well be your number of iterations, right? I mean, no, so your T is basically the number of iterations. This is some parameter that tells you you need a cooling schedule. It could be linear, in which case it is basically like number of iterations or the inverse of it, because with the increasing number of iterations you want a lower temperature. So what are the annealing parameters, and what do we mean by annealing parameters? They are the hyperparameters for your estimation algorithm. Your estimation algorithm here is simulated annealing, which has certain parameters you have to tune. So any algorithm first of all has to have a stopping condition. When do you say stop? Stop exploring, stop jumping around, right? So when T comes to 0 maybe, but you may also want to stop when you have your E becomes low enough, the error, the objective function. So suppose you are minimizing something, the fit of your data to your experiments and so on. So maybe if that number becomes very low, right, you are within 1% error of the data set that you have, then no problem, stop the annealing. So initial temperature, annealing schedule, the length of the run, stopping conditions and so on, and often these are decided by trial and error, right, because it is not easy to estimate these for different data sets. So maybe for a particular kind of data set, one kind of cooling schedule will work, for another kind of data set another kind of cooling schedule will work. Why would this be the case?
There are a lot of local minima, we need to explore more.
Depending on the data,
how you've taken the data out of space.
depending upon the data and the model, right, because the landscape depends upon the data and the model. What is your what do we mean by landscape? It is E of theta, the cost function of theta, right, and E of theta in turn depends on x, which in turn depends upon the model. Your predictions, and the predictions in turn depend upon the model and of course the parameter values. So this can get quite tricky. So then let us look at genetic algorithms, which is again a very popular direct search algorithm, which is extensively used in parameter estimation. So if you see most biology papers will report parameter estimation using a genetic algorithm, and in genetic algorithm you have a few flavors. So genetic algorithms they are all broadly part of evolutionary algorithms. And inside of these you have genetic algorithms, you have evolution strategies, very commonly used in biology. Then you have differential evolution and several others, right. You can have evolvable hardware and multiple other things. The most important for us are genetic algorithms, evolution strategies and differential evolution. So for this, first we need to understand the various concepts of evolution. The first important thing about evolution is it happens only in populations. So you need a population, and every population is essentially made up of individuals. And how does evolution occur? It happens via mutation, crossover and such. So it involves mutation, crossover, and then there is selection, that is important, and selection happens based on fitness. In fact, you call it here a fitness function. So all these are essentially biological terms which have new connotations in the context of evolutionary algorithms. So, what is an individual? It's essentially a candidate solution. Population is groups of, okay, set is better, set of individuals. There is also another important term here, which is generation. You all know what a generation is, right? So, parents belong to one generation, children belong to the next generation, and so on. So, similarly here, you have one set of individuals belong to one generation. From those individuals, you will generate other individuals, right? So, there is some reproduction that has to happen, and then you will get the next generation, and so on, right? So, population is basically
And it's an iteration.
yeah, you can say it's like iteration.
So it's like initial condition.
Initial condition is initial population. Generation is number of generations will be a hyperparameter.
But how can I have a group of initial solution, initial condition? I'll have
Random X naught. Right. So all of these, all direct search algorithms actually need a theta naught to start with. How you pick that theta naught is also important. Usually random, right? So and it has to. So in fact, in genetic algorithms, so on, we just start with a random initial population. Start with a random initial population, apply evolution crossover, and so on, and put a fitness selection pressure in the right direction. Let us see how we go about these. So, what is mutation? Mutation is essentially in biology, if you have a sequence like this, if this becomes this, that is a mutation, right? One base that is changing. So, this will cause, this can subsequently cause some change in the protein, maybe a change in function, gene expression, and so on, right? Whereas here in this case, for GAs, everything is represented as bit vectors. If you have a bit vector of this sort, so bit vector basically is made of bits, zeros and ones, you want to mutate it. So, what you do is you randomly pick a spot to mutate and you flip the bit. So, here this one bit is flipped, right, and in crossover you essentially have two stretches of genes, right, and you choose a point to crossover, and then you get two genes that are modified versions of the parents. So, this you can think of as asexual reproduction, and this is essentially sexual reproduction. You are basically getting information from two parents here, whereas here it is just coming from one parent. So, depending upon the case, this might be like a global search and a local search, if you are looking at the real space. Okay. So, what does crossover mean? So, you have 0 0 0 1 1 1 0 0 1 1 0 0 1 1 1 and 1 1 0 0 0 0 1 1 1 1 1 0 0 0 0. So, this will now become I might fix the whole thing. So, this will now become 0 0 0 1 1 1 0 0 1 1 1 1 0 0. Sorry, that should have come down. So, that this will now become 0 0 0 1 1 1 0 0 1 1 0 0 sorry 1 1 0 0 0 0, and this becomes 0 0 1 1 1 1 1 0 1 1 1 0 0 0 0 1 1, right. So, this fragment comes directly here and this fragment goes here and so on. So, essentially if you have an A1 B1 and A2 B2, you have a crossover which gives you A1 B2 A2 B1 if these are segments of the genome, or here in this case segments of your bit strings, bit vectors. You randomly pick a, you can have, so this is actually what is known as a single point crossover. You can have a multiple point crossover as well, right. So, basically let us say you have a gene that looks like this and another gene that looks like this, you have multiple points. So, basically this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. Exactly. So, we have still not gotten into what is the exact representation. So, what we said are this is a way to represent solution to some optimization problem. In our case it is going to be the parameter estimation problem, for which we will have a specific representation. We just come to that.
So each of the bits represents parameters.
So, let us look at it. So, what is your bit vector, because what is it that you want to estimate, you want to find out what is theta, and let us say theta equals right. So, you want, and let us say we use some k bits per theta, you will end up having nk bits, right. So, you will have a long bit string. The first k will be theta 1, the next k will be theta 2, the next k will be theta 3, theta n. Now, you flip many bits here, right. So, you are going to change theta 1, theta 2, theta 3, theta n, many of them will change, or you take two such vectors and cross them over, right. So, some theta 1 value will go to theta 4, or you know you will get some mixed up versions of the two parameter vectors, right. So, there are various ways in which you can do this. So, you have a lot of freedom and variety in how do you pick these operations and how do you go about each of these operations.
You can use both mutation and crossover together, moving from one
Yeah.
generation.
So let us just recap the situation. So, we start with one generation with one population, right. At the end of one generation you do a bunch of mutations, crossovers and so on, and generate multiple children. One thing that you do in most evolutionary algorithms is that you keep the population size fixed. So, let us say I started with 100 individuals. I mutate them, do whatever I want, right, and I might come with in the middle I might have 100 mutated individuals, and I might cross them over and so on and produce another 100 and maybe I also have the 100 parents, right. Now, again select 100. So, you throw away 200 solutions, right, or you might just create 50 mutations, 50 crossovers and throw away 100. There are various recipes you can come up, each one you can try any number of variants that you want, right. You finally have to examine, test these in terms of how good the convergence is and so on.
So you throw them which have the maximum cost, you will throw them.
Using that fit function you have to do it. That fit function.
So, how do you do the selection?
Which of them have the maximum cost, you throw them away.
So, this is tricky. So, how do you actually come up with the best way to select the next population, right? So, there are various selection methods that are available, right. You can have what is known as elitist selection, you can have what is known as tournament selection, or roulette wheel selection. So, in this video I hope you had a good introduction to direct search and stochastic search algorithms in general, and in particular simulated annealing, which is a very interesting way, which was one of the oldest methods proposed to jump out of local minima in optimization problems, as well as genetic algorithms, which brings in a new flavor by adapting concepts from evolution to computation. In the next video we will look at some other applications for GA, such as in scheduling and so on.